Welcome back to our news bulletin. We start from Syria, where Turkey says it has killed 55 Syrian soldiers in northwestern Idlib province. The defense ministry said Ankara's local sources have confirmed the casualties. The attack comes after Ankara threatened to strike Syrian forces anywhere in retaliation for an assault which killed 5 Turkish soldiers earlier this week. Tensions are high in the region following clashes between Turkish and Russia-backed Syrian forces in Idlib. Yesterday, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan accused Moscow of committing a massacre in Syria. Russia rejects the allegation, saying Ankara is breaking its ceasefire agreements with Moscow. The Kremlin says Turkish troops are aggravating the situation in Idlib. In a related development, Turkey and US have discussed the situation in Syria and Iraq on the sidelines of NATO defense ministers' meeting in Brussels. Ankara's defense minister Hulusi Akar and his American counterpart Mark Esper agreed that NATO and Washington should take more concrete steps in the region. Prior to the meeting, Akar expressed satisfaction with statements by US officials regarding Idlib. Meanwhile, US envoy for Syria James Jeffrey met Turkish President's advisor Ibrahim Kalin and other officials in Ankara. Earlier, Jeffrey said that Turkey is facing a threat from Bashar al-Assad's government and Russia. Ankara has sent major reinforcements to Idlib region in the last 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is arriving in Islamabad today on a 2-day official visit. Pakistan's foreign ministry says Erdogan will hold one-on-one meetings with Prime Minister Imran Khan and other top leadership of the country. The ministry said the two leaders will co-chair the 6th session of the Pakistan-Turkey High-Level Strategic Cooperation Council. The session will be followed by a joint declaration, while a number of important agreements are expected to be signed. The ministry said President Erdogan will also address a joint session of Pakistan's parliament tomorrow. Khan and Erdogan will address the Pakistan-Turkey Business and Investment Forum hosted by leading investors from both countries. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says the Turkish president's visit will help promote multifaceted bilateral relations between the two countries. Let's take a look at Pak-Turk relations and what can be expected from this important visit in this report by our correspondent Isa Naqvi.
Diplomatic ties between the two countries date back to 1947, soon after the creation of Pakistan. Turkey was one of the first countries to recognize Pakistan and supported its bid to become a UN member. Today, the two countries enjoy close cultural, historical and military ties, which are rapidly expanding into deepening economic relations.
Turkey is the flag bearer for Pakistan on many forums where it is a member. Pakistan and Turkey understand the threats and the larger geopolitical picture that is emerging.
Pakistan's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Aisha Faruqi says the Turkish president's delegation includes senior cabinet ministers and a large business delegation.
A central point of this visit is the HLSCC, which is the High-Level Strategic Cooperation Council meeting. In essence, this is a meeting between the two cabinets of brotherly countries. So there will be joint working group meetings, ministerial segment, and of course the final HLSCC session chaired by the Prime Minister from our side and the President of Turkey.
Despite their cordial relations, economic experts believe there is a trade deficit between Pakistan and Turkey that needs to be bridged.
We need to focus more on exporting certain things which are value added, which are more industry based. Pakistan can also give more opportunities to the Turkish entrepreneurs here.
President Erdogan's visit provides an opportunity to kickstart initiatives to fill the trade gap. Pakistan and Turkey have proven to be steadfast allies through the decades, despite changing regional and global scenarios. Now, experts believe President Erdogan's visit will further deepen the bonds between Islamabad and Ankara. Reporting for Indus News, Isa Naqvi, Islamabad.
Moving on, 4 U.S. senators have asked the State Department to provide assessments on India's crackdown in occupied Kashmir. In a letter to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, the lawmakers have asked Washington to pursue India to end its lockdown of the occupied valley. They expressed concerns over the communications blackout and human rights violations in the occupied Kashmir. They said India has imposed history's longest ever internet shutdown by a democracy, paralyzing businesses, healthcare and education. The lawmakers also raised the issue of hundreds of Kashmiris, including key politicians, under arrest for 3 months. The occupied valley has been reeling under India's lockdown and communications blackout for the past 193 days. The US and the Taliban are reportedly closer to sealing a peace deal for the withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan. US officials and the Taliban say the deal could be signed this month. The development comes a day after Afghan President Ashraf Ghani reported notable progress in the Doha peace talks. NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg has also welcomed apparent progress towards the deal. He warned the Taliban must reduce attacks. The prospective deal would see US pull troops from Afghanistan in return, for which the Taliban would provide security guarantees. The US and the Taliban were on the brink of a breakthrough in September before US President Donald Trump abruptly called off the talks. In China's Hubei province, 242 people have died from the new coronavirus in the deadliest day of the outbreak so far. China's National Health Commission says almost 1,500 people have been confirmed infected in the last 24 hours, marking a 10-fold increase. 1,363 people have now died from the disease, while over 60,000 have been infected. More in this report.
The death toll from the new coronavirus is still climbing, claiming lives in China every day. The new approach to diagnosis has seen the number of cases dramatically increase, while the World Health Organization says so far there is no end in sight.
We need to focus on the task, and the task is to contain the virus, to detect the cases, to treat the cases. If we keep doing those things, yes, we may see a drop in the number of cases, but I think it's way too early to try and predict the beginning, the middle, or the end of this epidemic.
Officials in Rio de Janeiro have stepped up their preparations for any possible coronavirus cases during Brazil's carnival season. Panic and hysteria continue to spread. Government officials are worried.
It's a concern because there is a great movement of people and large number of tourists coming into the country from all over the world. So when one thinks about it, coronavirus can be transmitted through drops in the transmission area, then yes, it is concerning.
In Japan, another 44 people have tested positive on the cruise ship quarantined in Yokohama. The total number of cases on board have now risen to 218.
The UN Security Council has approved a resolution calling for a lasting ceasefire in war-torn Libya. The UK drafted motion was approved by 14 votes, with Russia abstaining. This is the first binding text adopted by the UNSC since fighting broke out in April last year. The resolution stressed the need for an unconditional truce in Libya at the earliest. It also voiced concern over the growing involvement of foreign mercenaries in the country. Russia had blocked an earlier resolution on the conflict, asking to replace the word mercenaries with foreign terrorist fighters. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has met with Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud at the State Department in Washington. The meeting came on the heels of talks between Saudi Arabia and Qatar breaking down earlier this week. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt have severed political, trade, and transport ties with Qatar in mid-2017. Washington has strong ties with all the states involved, including Qatar. Doha hosts the largest U.S. military base in the region and sees the rift as a threat to efforts to contain Tehran. It has pushed for a united Gulf front. The WHO says it is extending its global emergency for the Ebola outbreak in DR Congo for another 3 months. The UN Health Agency said signs of improvement are extremely positive. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said one case of Ebola in an area as unstable as eastern DR Congo could create a larger epidemic. Earlier, the WHO said progress has been made to combat the disease in the country's conflict-battered North Kivu and Ituri provinces. The WHO's regional director for Africa said the country's situation is different now than a few months ago. Germany's far-right AfD party says it will sue Chancellor Angela Merkel for alleged abuse of office. The party claims the chancellor coerced a state premier into resigning after he was elected with the support of the far-right. The AfD wants to file 2 lawsuits against Merkel, arguing her actions forced Thuringia's newly elected president Thomas Kemmerich to step down. Last week, the party's co-chair Georg Merten said the chancellor has committed a violation of the right of equal opportunities for all parties. Merkel called Kemmerich's election unforgivable and said the result must be reversed. The premier of Thuringia called for the original parliament to be dissolved after his election caused a scandal for accepting far-right votes. Preparations are underway in Germany for tomorrow's annual Munich Security Conference. Police have already started cordoning the area around Munich Berricher Hof Hotel. Large number of police will be deployed for the 3-day event, welcoming leaders from around the world. Dozens of politicians and representatives from NATO, the EU, and the UN are due to arrive for panel discussions and bilateral meetings. U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg are all confirmed to attend. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi will also travel to Germany to attend the conference. He will co-chair the 5th round of China-Germany strategic dialogue on diplomacy and security. We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. It has been 75 years since Allied forces bombed the German city of Dresden in World War II. Some military historians suggest the city had little, if any, strategic value. 75 years later, the trauma from the event still lingers. This report has more.
Nora Lang was 13 when 1,000 Allied bombers dropped 4,000 tons of explosives on her city. She says those were the most horrible hours of her life.
First, there were sounds of bombs, and then I thought, now tanks are rolling over our heads. The front line was not far. I thought, maybe this is the end of the war, and at the same time, I thought it's the end of the world. As a child, I thought that.
Lang says she still feels the pain and anguish of the bombing to this day, but she's also haunted by the fact that scores of children in the Middle East and across the world are suffering the same fate as her.
Is there no one to help us? That was our question. And we thought this cannot be happening. In my view, these are the questions to this very day those ask who have to go through something like this. Is there no one to help us? You are aware that it's not happening around the globe, so there must be many places where peace reigns. People must react after all.
British and American bombers killed 25,000 people when they raided Dresden between the 13th and the 15th of February 1945. UNICEF has recorded 170,000 violations of children's rights in war zones over the past decade. That works out at 45 violations each day.
The European Parliament has approved a tough opening position for talks with the UK on its future relationship with the EU. Members of European Parliament passed a resolution asking Britain to follow EU policies. The resolution calls for measures to ensure Brexit does not cause gender discrimination and to avoid a crackdown on tax havens with links to the UK. It also demands a dynamic alignment of the country with EU laws. The resolution says the UK should commit to fair economic competition to prevent European businesses being undercut by British rivals. Italy's Senate has voted to allow prosecutors to put far-right leader Matteo Salvini on trial. Salvini is accused of illegally keeping people on a boat off Sicily for days in August 2019. During the Senate session, Salman openly asked to be put on trial. In July last year, Salman refused to let a group of migrants dock as he waited for other EU states to agree to take them in. Some 116 people were stranded aboard the Geography for close to a week. Salman could face up to 15 years in jail if convicted, which would bar him from political office. Mexico says the number of migrants in the country waiting on the outcome of their U.S. immigration cases has fallen sharply. Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard said the number has dropped from 50,000 to 2,500. Speaking at a news conference, Ebrard said he expected the number of migrants in the Remain in Mexico program to stay at current levels. Since January 2019, Washington has sent migrants, many from Central America and Cuba, to Mexico under a policy called the Migrant Protection Protocols. The policy has been a key element of President Donald Trump's push to curb waves of migrants seeking asylum in the U.S. The Nissan Motor Company has sued its fugitive former boss Carlos Ghosn to recover $90 million in damages for his alleged financial misdeeds. Japan's second biggest car maker and its alliance with France's Renault have been in doldrums since Ghosn's arrest in November 2018. The lawsuit was filed in Yokohama District Court. The car maker said it may pursue separate legal action over Ghosn's alleged defamatory remarks in Beirut. In response, Ghosn's spokesman said it was part of a character assassination campaign against him. Ghosn spent over 100 days in detention in Japan after his sudden arrest, but later fled to Lebanon undetected. 13 people are killed after a private bus collided with a truck in India's northern state of Uttar Pradesh. Witnesses say a bus carrying over 40 passengers hit a stationary truck from behind. Police say 31 others are injured in the accident near the Firozabad city on the Agra-Lucknow expressway. They said the bus was going from Indian capital Delhi to eastern state of Bihar. In South Africa, extreme drought is killing livestock animals across the northern Kalahari. The arid climate is hitting farming and the tourism industry. Forced to interrupt their work, farmers and hoteliers alike desperately wait for rain. This report will tell you more.
More than 1,000 animals have died on this Northern Cape game farm over the last few months, as South Africa's entire Kalahari region is being crippled by one of the worst droughts locals have ever seen.
We are trying to go on as we are at the moment, but it's only going to be so long before all our resources are out, and we don't have any money left to do what we do.
Turu Lodge, like so many others in the area, is heavily reliant on international hunters to keep the business afloat. But recently, none have arrived.
Unfortunately, the drought forced us to place all our bookings on hold. We can't book a guy coming from overseas, having the safari feeling and trying to give him the best safari he ever had. But the animals that's here are very skinny and he's dying.
A few kilometers away, lifelong commercial farmer Johan Steenkamp admits he can't keep going on like this past March.
Our animals are really suffering. We have lost many animals. At this stage, I have between 30 and 40% of my herd left. Everything else either died or we had them slaughtered.
Even as the region enters its much-anticipated rainy season, the farms and their animals will need more than a year to recover, and many simply don't have that long.
Stock markets in Asia are trading mixed as investors assess a spike in the number of new coronavirus cases reported in China after a revised criteria. The Shanghai Composite is trading over 0.5% lower as investors fail to sustain the rally. Hong Kong's Hang Seng has lost a fraction. Nikkei 225 is trading fractionally lower as SoftBank Group shares declined over 2.5% after posting a near wipeout of its quarterly profit. Seoul's Kospi is trading marginally higher, barring early losses, as shares of SK Hynix surged over 2%. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.